Welcome to this explainer. As we were digging into today's source material, we uncovered a strategy that honestly feels completely counterintuitive at first glance. What if I told you the actual secret to skyrocketing your conversions is to hide what you were selling? I know, for a traditional marketer, that sounds absolutely terrifying, right? The instinct is always to make that buy now button as big, bright, and immediate as possible. But the data reveals a pretty fascinating reality. By making your offer virtually invisible right up until the exact perfect moment, you actually trigger a massive increase in engagement, trust, and ultimately sales. So we're going to explore the psychology behind why keeping your core offer under wraps is actually your ultimate growth lever. Let's get right into it.
Okay, let's dive right into section 1, the invisible offer mistake.
So is your offer completely invisible? Let's ground this in a scenario that plays out, thousands of times a day. Picture a passionate business owner. They've got this truly transformative product, they've spent hours dialing in their messaging, and they've invested a massive chunk of their budget into highly targeted digital ads just to drive traffic. Then they log into their dashboard and see thousands of clicks rolling in. The eyeballs are literally there. But the conversions column sits at an agonizing 0. People are bouncing almost instantly. It's crazy because despite spending an absolute fortune to put the product right in front of their target audience, the offer is essentially invisible to the very people who need it most. We really have to ask ourselves why this disconnect happens.
Well, here's the hard truth. You're leading with your offer. If a campaign is flatlining, it's usually because a brand new visitor is getting a sales pitch shoved in their face way too early in the relationship. The psychology here is actually pretty straightforward. Imagine you're walking down the street deep in thought about a problem you have. Out of nowhere, a total stranger runs up, blocks your path, and aggressively asks you for $500 to solve it before even saying hello. There is no way you'd listen to that pitch. Your brain would instantly categorize them as a threat or an annoyance, and you just cross the street. The exact same thing happens digitally. When you blast an offer to cold traffic, the buyer's brain just tunes it out as noise. They simply can't see the value because their defensive walls are fully raised.
Which brings us perfectly to section 2, stop selling cold traffic. This is such a crucial distinction. Cold traffic wants answers, whereas interested leads get offers. The source material highlights this stark contrast between two very distinct mindsets. You see, cold traffic is made up of people who literally just realize they have a problem, or maybe they're casually searching for a quick fix. They are highly skeptical and, understandably, very protective of their wallets. They absolutely do not want an offer yet. They just want answers to ease their immediate pain. Now, an interested lead? That's someone who has already received an answer, found it valuable, and has actively raised their hand to say, hey, I want to know more. The golden rule we pull from this data is that you must never sell to cold traffic. Never. Offers belong exclusively in front of leads who have already demonstrated they're engaged and ready for a structured solution. So how do we actually do that? Section 3, lead with education first. We need to put helpful, educational content into every single traffic source. If we're banning this sales page from that very first interaction, well, education is what takes its place. Let's say you run an online fitness coaching business. When someone clicks your ad about lower back pain, your first interaction shouldn't be a pricing tier for your 12-week masterclass. No way. Inside, it should be a free, highly actionable guide on, say, 3 stretches to relieve back pain right now. Your primary goal isn't to make a sale on click number 1. Your goal is to prove to the prospect that you deeply, genuinely understand their specific pain point. By leading entirely with education, you're providing upfront value and building a solid bridge of trust long before you ever ask them to open their wallet.
Let's map out this exact journey step by step, because this is how you fix a leaky marketing funnel. Step 1 is traffic. We're generating those initial clicks, getting fresh eyeballs. But instead of pitching them, we seamlessly route them to step 2. Education. Because that educational content actually solves a micro problem for them, they willingly trade their contact information for it. And boom, that brings us to step 3, where they transition into a lead. They're now in your ecosystem, they're trusting your expertise. And only then do we arrive at step 4, the offer. By intentionally inserting education as a buffer right before the pitch, the whole psychological dynamic flips entirely. Your prospect moves from defensive resistance to eager receptivity. It's a real game changer.
All right, let's keep it moving to section 4. Keep your content fresh. You have to continually refresh what the marketplace sees. We're talking new lead magnets, new landing pages, new educational content, new designs, new headlines, and new angles. Why does this relentless updating matter so much?
Well, because the human brain is literally hardwired to crave novelty and ignore the familiar. If your audience sees the exact same free guide or the exact same headline for 6 months straight, ad fatigue sets in, and they just go blind to it. Keeping the content fresh is the fuel that keeps your marketplace intensely curious. And don't worry, you don't necessarily have to invent entirely new core concepts from scratch. You just need to present your foundational expertise from a dozen different entry points. It gives people a tangible, repeating reason to engage with your brand over and over again. And that brings us to our final piece of the puzzle, Section 5, the natural next step. Let education create the need and only then present the solution. As we were exploring the data, this elegant concept really stood out. You see, once someone trades their email for your initial free guide and becomes a lead, the education doesn't just stop there. You begin a targeted follow-up sequence. Maybe you send them an email outlining the common mistakes people make when trying to solve their problem. Every piece of ongoing education highlights a specific gap in their current strategy, which organically creates a vacuum. They start thinking to themselves, wow, I really need a comprehensive system to fix this. So by the time you finally reveal the paid offer, it feels like the exact lifeline they were just realizing they needed. It's literally requested and welcomed, rather than being some annoying, uninvited interruption.
Put education in front of traffic. Put offers in front of leads. I really want you to let that sink in. This single concept is the absolute bedrock of a high-converting modern marketing strategy. The days of just shouting a price tag at a crowd of strangers and hoping for a transaction, those days are over. The data overwhelmingly shows that trust is the currency that must precede any monetary exchange. Your cold traffic has to be taught, nurtured, and respected. Your warm leads, the ones who have actively engaged with that teaching, they are the only ones who should be sold to. Never mix those two up, and you will fundamentally change how your business grows.
So I'll leave you with this question. Will your next visitor get an interruption or an answer? Think about the very next person who clicks a link to your website right after you finish this explainer. Are they going to be greeted by a completely invisible, highly ignored offer that just triggers their defensive instincts? Or are you going to give them the exact answer they've been desperately looking for, sparking a relationship that naturally, inevitably leads to a sale? The choice is entirely yours, but the data clearly shows which path actually converts. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and we'll see you next time.